some things. And so point one is all is never lost when walking with God. All is never lost when working with God. I don't even know if that's a proper sentence or not. But I just thought, oh my goodness, what's going on? So there's some conditions. Next slide, Janie. Israel, King Ahab, he commits more evil. There's so much evil going on. You know, how can a nation that was founded under God turn and do so much evil? And people blindly follow it. Have we had an example of some of that here in the recent years? Our own government, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Have we gone away from what our founding forefathers laid out for us? Yes, we have. And have we followed it? Yes, we have. Well, Breck, we couldn't. How could we resist all these other things? We still followed many, many things that are going on. And not just recent, but over the years we've allowed and we've not, and just accepted things. This is what was going on in Israel. And also what happened is God's judgment came on Israel. All right? King Ahab commits more evil. God's judgment has fallen through his prophet Elijah. And now there's a drought. Everything is dying. They're already in an arid land. It doesn't take too much with no rain or no dew. The other day I got up and walked out to my yard and my shoes were soaking wet because of the dew. There wasn't even dew, which is crazy. So Israel's king Ahab commits the evil. No rain, there's a drought. And then what is God's solution for Elijah? Next slide. There you go. God's solution for Elijah's survival during the drought was this. Move to Zarephath, all right? Jezebel's territory, all right? Gentile. And it is a widow lady there is going to supply your food. All right, let's just think about this for a minute. If I was Elijah, I would say, what? Do you want me to go up further north in the Baal territory? All right? Your enemy. And you want me to find a widow who's going to supply me food? This makes no sense. All right? Now let's just think this, but let's wrap this up into where we are now today. Have you ever been in a situation like that? God, you have me in a circumstance, in a position that makes no sense. I have been walking with you. I have been following you. I have been praying to you to guide and direct me. But yet, as I have been walking, my situation seems to be going worse than better. All right? So kind of put yourself in Elijah's situation. There is a drought. God just says, go tell him there's going to be a drought. And when I tell you there'll be rain again. But it's going to be a few years. So here's Elijah, a man of God. And God says, now I want you to go further north, right into the heart of Baal worship territory. And I'm going to have a woman, a widow woman, feed you. If I was Elijah, I don't know about you, but I'd say, you know what? I could go back south where I have family and I have people who like me, not people who want me dead. But Elijah obeyed and went. Now, next slide, Janie. We're going to talk about this widow woman for a minute. The widow lady. What about a typical widow in those days? Usually very poor, to the point where most of them were destitute. They lived on charity and just the goodness of people doing things. Well, now they're in a severe drought. There's not a lot of goodness in people because they're hoarding whatever they have just to feed their own families. So here's this widow lady. Usually they would be the first ones to run out of any resources because there's no government programs handing out money, handing out food, all this other stuff. They're on their own. And the widow lady, this is what I think is so cool about her, what God opened my eyes to. Number one, she recognized Elijah as a man of God. How do we know that? Because it tells us right here. When Elijah came, he says, I have directed a widow there to supply you with food. So he went to Zarephath, and when he came to the town gate, a widow was there gathering sticks. As she was going to get it, he called, Anne, please bring a piece of bread. As surely as the Lord, this is what she says, as surely as the Lord your God. She says this to Elijah. She recognized who he was, not from the area. Because of the drought and the Baal worship, what was going on at that time, they said, well, Baal is dead because he is no longer taking care of his people. But then she sees this Elijah who serves a different God. So she recognizes that Elijah is different. He's from Israel, serves a different God. And here's another thing about the woman. She admits, I only have a little bit of oil and a little bit of flour. It was even inadequate for her own survival. But if we back up, and I highlighted this in my Bible, God says this, I have directed a widow to supply your food. You know, when God tells us in his word, my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. My ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts are higher than your thoughts, and my ways are higher than your ways. Of all the people in the world that God could have chosen, he chose a widow with no resources in a pagan territory to do his work. I have directed a widow. What was her situation? It was destitute. Did God come to her and say, listen, I am going to send this man to you and you're going to provide this food? I don't think God told her anything. But he picked her. Now think about it. Remember the circumstance until it goes from bad to worse. And we're like, God, what are you doing? Why is this happening to me? All this is going on. Everybody else is excelling, but here I am, and I have nothing. What if God has directed every bit of your circumstance to bring you to this point right here and right now, to do something that you can't even think of or comprehend, or it's even in your thought process? Another thing I noticed about this woman is she is not standing in a spot of, yes, she's vulnerable, yes, she's all this, but I vision her as she is standing in a spot of power. Breck, how can you say that? She's a widow woman with no resources. How do I know? She's not sitting at home wallowing, oh, we're going to die, I'm just going to do this. She's out gathering sticks. She's doing what she can with the few little resources and the time and stuff. She probably hasn't eaten days. And she's out gathering sticks to go back and to prepare a meal. She's not sitting back whining, oh, this is so terrible, look at our, and crying about. Maybe she's done some of that probably, but she's doing something with what she has, which is nothing. Why do we know she's destitute? Because she's out gathering a few sticks. What do you have right now that you don't even see what you're going through? So here's Elijah's request when he tells her this. And we got to listen to the order of the way this goes. Next slide, Kenny. Elijah's instructions, I should say this. First thing he says, do not be afraid. He tells her that very first thing he meets her. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go home. I want you to take a little bit of that oil and a little bit of that flour that you have left and bake me a bread first. Complete stranger, foreigner in the land. And then bring me a little bit of water. I don't even know how much water they would have had. And then after that, cook yourself for your son and for you your last meal. And he says, but if you do this, I want you to understand something. God will not allow that oil to go dry or that flour to run out. Now picture yourself as this widow woman. She's out picking up a few sticks. She's destitute. Nobody's been helping her. And now this stranger comes and says, make me something first. But she recognized something about him. What was it that made her go back and make that loaf of bread first? Because the oil wasn't going to run out till after she made her meal and her son. So I can just see her going to her flour bin, maybe taking a little pinch or two of oil, because you said a piece of bread, and putting it into a bowl, taking that little bit of olive oil and dipping in there just enough to make some bread, those few little sticks, and she bakes this bread. and gets a little cup of water and goes back out to Elijah. And he probably says, thank you, eats and drinks it real fast. And then she goes back, and she looks at a little oil, and there's maybe just a few drops in there left. The flour, no, I got to make my son and I even less. And how was it that God, this is the same thing with the fishes and the loaves. How did he increase it? As she put the flour in, how did it grow? You know, did she little pinch in there and look back? Oh, there's still some left. I didn't scrape it all up. And gets some more and puts it in. Oh, there's still a little bit left. A little bit more. Pretty soon she's got a bowl of flour. Wow, how did that happen? I think I could see a little bit of excitement growing her. She takes that little bit of oil. And this is so much flour. Now there's not enough oil. You know, she pours it out. No, that's really not enough. Oh, there's still a little bit left. Pours it out. Pours it out. Next thing, there's this huge loaf of bread and dough that she can bake. She probably had to go out and gather more sticks because the fire wouldn't have been hot enough to cook a big loaf of bread. Isn't that something? God provided miraculously in a way that she never knew was possible. Next slide, Jane. The response from the widow was obedience. She did as she was told. She didn't go make him a little loaf and then make him another one. I can't give him that one. I'll give him the small. She made Elijah's meal first. And I love this. It says in verse 10 or 19. She went away and did as Elijah told her. So there. Because she did that. That's why I don't think the oil and anything happened until after she made that last loaf of bread. So there was food every day for Elisha, for the woman, not only her son, but her family. God abundantly provided. Now again, it's bread and water during a drought. God did this work. So there was food for her and her family. Here's my question I wrote down. How about you? Even myself as I'm thinking about all this. Are you willing to trust God with your current circumstances right now? You know, there's so much going on in the world. I can tell you, you can worry about so much. Man, Lord, my finances are only this, and I have this to pay. I have to watch my kids and my grandkids, and if something happens to them, I got to hold on to them. I got to keep them a little bit closer so I can control everything. Maybe it's my health. Lord, the doctor said this, and I'm searching the internet for alternate methods and other things that people are telling me. I got to know more. I have to know all these things. And we're into this point where it's a panic, right? And we're not sleeping at night because we don't have all the answers to ourselves in our own brain, and we can't figure it out. I am telling you right now, when we get in those situations, that is sin. Because who are we trusting? Me, not God. We sang a song. I wrote it down. Standing on the promises of God. When I'm in those situations, I'm not standing on anything but sand. I'm going to stand on the promises of God, who says, I will never leave you. I will never forsake you. And you say, Breck, well, my situation, I'm not feeding a prophet. I'm not doing this. The woman didn't know that either. She got up that morning with her plan was to cook a little meal and die. That was her plan. But God. Are you willing to put your trust in God with your current circumstances right now? And here's what I wrote, really to myself. Then act on that commitment. Stop fretting and worrying and not sleeping. You can stop it because in your mind you can say, and my mom did this when she had pancreatic cancer. I'm like, Mom, how do you not go from being so happy and content to just being so anxious because your health is deteriorating, not getting better? How do you hold that mentally? She goes, Breck, when I get in those situations, I stop. And I don't allow myself to think about it anymore. How do you do that? Just I pray, I sing, I do other things, and I remember God's promises to me. And I do not stop until those other feelings have gone away. Standing on the promises of God. Do you know his promises? They're all through the very beginning to the end. Maybe some of us need to do even what I did. Get up and get off the screen and open up your word and let God fill you. Because point 2 is God's goodness is everlasting. It's not just for a season of drought. It goes on and on and on. How do we know that? Because we're going to go back to Matthew. Now we're in Matthew 20. And it's the parables of the workers in the vineyard. You got to remember a couple of things. The question that was asked in 19 from Peter after he said, man, it is harder for a rich man to get through the eye of the needle than enter the kingdom of heaven. And God says this, with man it's impossible, with God all things are possible. And he says this, those who have left houses and lands and families and all this stuff will receive in my reign back 100 times. In other words, it's not you can compare what you've given up to what you get. But many who are first will be last, and many who are last will be first. And then he goes on to explain a parable. And this is the parable, kind of always confused me a little bit. This is why I was struggling with it, but I'm just going to read it to you. It says, for the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day and sent them into his vineyard. It's a day's pay. It's an average day's pay. About 9 in the morning, he went out and saw others standing in the marketplace doing nothing. He told them, you could also go out and work in the vineyard, for I will pay you what is right. So they went. He went out again about noon, and about 3 in the afternoon, and did the same thing. About 5 in the afternoon, he went out and still found others standing around. He asked them, why have you been standing around here all day doing nothing? Because no one has hired us, they answered. He said to them, you must go, you also go and work in the vineyard. When evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, call the workers and pay their wages, beginning with the last ones hired and going to the first. The workers who were hired about 5 in the afternoon came and each received a denarius. So when those came who were hired first, they expected to receive more. But each of them also received the denarius. When they received it, they began to grumble against the landowner. Those who were hired last worked only 1 hour, they said, and you gave them equal to us, who have borne the burden of the work in the heat of the day. But he answered one of them, I am not being unfair to you, friend. Didn't you agree to work for denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the one who was hired last the same as I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money? Or are you envious because I am generous? So the last will be first, and the first will be last. That's how he explained it. So, what's going on here? I kind of agree with those workers that hired in the beginning, like they should be paid more, right? But here, and I came across this interesting story. It's going along on Facebook and things right now. There was an evangelist named Mordecai Ham in 1934. Did a big tent revival. And I think it was Charlotte, North Carolina. 2 young boys, 14 years old, heard about it and went and wanted to go. And when they got there, they couldn't find a seat sitting together. So they decided, well, we'll come another time, or maybe I don't even want to be here. And they turned around to leave. An usher came running up to them and said, wait a minute, young men, you need to stay and hear this Mordecai. I'll find you 2 seats together. And he went back and made some people move, and he got these 2 boys in the seats, right? And they sat there. At the end of that evangelistic event, these 2 young men gave their life to the Lord. One was named Grady Wilson. Grady went on to organize some huge other evangelical events, organized it all, traveled the world, did all this work for God. The other young man was named Billy Graham. Can you believe that? Billy Graham and Grady Wilson went to hear Mordecai Ham and were going to leave until one unknown usher ran up to him and said, wait a minute, I'm going to find you 2 seats. No one in the world ever has shared the gospel to more people than Billy Graham. Tens of millions, traveled the world. And Grady Wilson was right there by his side helping him do it all. We asked this last week, who did the real work? Was it Mordecai Ham that gave the great message that Billy Graham and Grady Wilson heard? Was it Grady Wilson and Billy Graham that ran across the globe continuing the work of God and bringing all kinds of people to Christ and sharing the message? Or was it the usher who said, I can't do anything. I don't have a great seminary education. I can't speak to people, but I'll go volunteer. And I'll usher people to some seats. The last shall be first. Isn't that something? God wants to do a work in and through you that you cannot even comprehend, if you'll allow him. If you'll just be obedient in the circumstance that maybe is great for you right now. Maybe it's just kind of coasting right now. Or maybe you're in a pit that you just don't see any into, that makes no sense, that you can't get out of. Because God directed a widow woman in the midst of her lowest point of her life to do a huge work that she could not even comprehend. And until she walked by faith and stepped into it, then God did the rest. What did God do with all these workers? He gave them a job. I will commend the workers for this. They went out and they worked. And they worked hard. I'm not belittling anything that Billy Graham, Grady Wilson, Mordecai Ham, none of those did. Those guys were men of God who did mighty and great things. But I also don't want to overlook, or I'll call people that we write off, the insignificance, that I think God says, that's my man. That's the one who is faithful in little will be faithful in much. But then he goes on in point 3. God's kingdom service starts now. It's not when my situation gets better. It's not when I graduate. It's not when circumstances change. It begins now. And how do we know this? Because God's word tells us right here. Verse 17, now Jesus was going to Jerusalem. On the way, he took the 12 aside and said to them, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death, and will hand him over to the Gentiles to be mocked, flogged, and crucified. And on the 3rd day, he will be raised to life. He tells them exactly, plainly, what's going to happen. God has told us as well. Situations we're living in, the world we're living in, is going to go to hell. Things are going to get bad. But don't you worry, because I am with you. I am walking with you. I am teaching you. I am equipping you. And I am sending you out as lambs to be slaughtered. It's not real appealing, right? But then I'm coming back. And I am going to claim each and every one of you who are mine. And then you're going to come home with me forever. Just like that widow woman. Go back. Make the bread. Then watch what I will do. And he goes on. And this is us. Verse 20. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to Jesus with her sons, and kneeling down, asked a favor of him. What is it you want? He asked. She said, grant that one of these 2 sons of mine may sit on your right and the other on your left in your kingdom. You don't know what you are asking, Jesus said to them. Can you drink the cup that I am going to drink? Remember, I'm going to be beaten, I'm going to be crucified, and I'm going to die and be raised. It says, we can, they asked. Jesus said to them, you will indeed drink from my cup. But to sit on my right and my left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those to whom they have been prepared for by my Father. When the 10 heard about this, they were indignant and said to the two brothers, Jesus called them together and said, you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and that their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be your slave, just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. These disciples, guys, still didn't get it, because Jesus had just told them, you want to come to me, you come to me like a little child. You don't come to me thinking all this prestige and everything else. You come to me as a little child, obedient, humble. Just come to me and watch how I will provide for you. Here's what James and John did. They convinced their mother, Mom, you go to Jesus, he'll listen to you. He won't listen to us. And tell him, we want to sit on the right and the left hand. Who were James and John? They were the sons of thunder, right? They were the hotheads. Man, we're going to be there. When Jesus says something, we're going to add the exclamation point. We're going to make sure people listen and do everything. And again, in their mind, they were trying, in a good way. I don't think they were being too greedy, maybe a little bit. But here's what happens. There's three things that we need to watch out for. Position, power, and prestige. Those are the three things that we all want recognition for what we're doing. We remember Billy Graham, right? Because he was the front leader. We may or may not remember the next guy. In fact, I can't remember his name. I have to look. Grady Wilson. Maybe you knew him during the time, maybe not. But we all remember Billy Graham. Nobody knows who the usher was. The widow lady, Elijah, we know about because we read him in the Word. She didn't even have a name. But God knows everyone. He knows every one of his children. So he knows you so well that the hairs of your head are numbered. Here's a problem with power, position, power, and prestige. Next slide. We have to beware of these intoxicating draw of the desire of these. Here were the disciples, good men, walking with Jesus for 3 years, seeing everything that he has done, and he still fell prey to that. That's what happens. Man, Breck, I follow Jesus, I get into this, and we start walking and doing some things, but nobody gives us recognition. Nobody is there to say, man, that was a great work. Thank you so much for providing whatever, for doing whatever. Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. I've been told, and when I started seminary and wanted to become a pastor, another very seasoned pastor came to me and goes, Breck, you want to know the most dangerous time for a pastor is? And I thought, wow, I don't really know. It was right after the sermon. I said, why? It's because people are going to come up and say, man, that was a great word. That was something that really inspired me, man. They'll come to you weeping, and pretty soon you're going to hear that maybe time and time and time again. You're going to start thinking, wow, God is really using me to do a great work. It's not it at all. God is doing the work. I pray every time before I come up here, Lord, may you hear the Spirit and not me. Anything that comes from me, just let them forget it right away. May it only be what the Spirit has to say that remains. Because it's not about me. And don't worry, I don't get a lot of that right now. I get plenty of that. But I've been very thankful for that man. Because here's basically the point. To excel in God's economy, we need to serve others. That's it. It's not when my needs are met, when I get things and stuff is settled down, then I will. If there is a need that God brings your way, you know what he wants you to do? He wants you to do this, just like the widow woman. Keep him first. Really simple. Keep God first and trust him. That's it. God will do the rest. Does that mean you're going to have success in your own eyes every time you do something? No. In fact, you might be ridiculed. They hated Jesus. They're going to hate you, the word tells us. You're going to do something kind, and people are going to take advantage of you. Did that happen to Jesus? I guarantee you here in another few weeks, we're going to read about those saying, crucify him, crucify him. And I will guarantee you, you can do the math. that there would be people in that audience yelling crucified that he had healed. And what did Jesus do? He went to the cross and he opened up his arms, still inviting everyone to taste in his wonderful, wonderful gift. So here's the last question. How about you? Are you ready for all God has for you? Go today and look for ways to humbly serve those God sends your way. Isn't that something? How do you gain in God's kingdom? By giving. That's how it works. I've said this before. God can't fill hands that are closed. He can only fill them when they're open. And I'll tell you, there's times I'm afraid to open them all the way because I like some things. I'm afraid if I give, I won't have. And God says, you don't understand. Let the widow's example be your story. Live open. Because not only did God provide for her and her son, but her family. Here's a really cool thing about it. There's so much more we could go on. He wasn't done with the widow woman. If you want to read the rest of the story in 1 Kings 17, her son dies. And she comes back to Elijah and says, what are you doing, God? I have done all of, or what are you doing, Elijah? I've done all this for you, and now my son dies. I'll let you read the rest of that to figure out what happens. It's pretty cool.